The playwright Fernando Arrabal, after traveling around Antequera, defined it as the perfect combination of what is divine and human. Undoubtedly, he referred to the fact that Antequera altogether combines unsurpassable natural wonders with exceptional man works impossible to find anywhere else. We'll try to explain this. The park of El Torcal de Antequera is one of the most incredible places in the world. It consists scientifically of a karsted landscape emerging from a seabed which submerged millions years ago. Then wind, water and ice shaped the rocks the way we see them today. That is its scientific origin. However, we prefer some other more poetic definitions, such as that why priest Manuel Gámez, speaker of the Semana Santa de Antequera 1989, at the 8th day God resting placed his hand over the earth and the Torcal was created, or that uttered by Juan José Rodríguez Rosado in 1974, who said, "You Antequera, which sways from the El Torcal to La Peña," or that which tells that a huge wave spurted out of the sea and it became petrified in the El Torcal. Precisely, El Torcal de Antequera gave shelter to the first man who settled on our land. Research from the University of Canarias stated the antiquity of this shelter, in which men kept wheat seeds. El Torcal de Antequera is formed by 17 square kilometers of limestones, which are joined and give shape to a unique, gorgeous and beyond compare landscape. Its origin goes millions of years back, when Andesite limestones emerged over 1,300 meters above sea level. Nature provided a paradise in which water and wind, as well as rock erosion, created an incomparable landscape that needs being there to understand its nature. We can get inside and be amazed by the shapes formed by its limestones. Thus, we can gaze at emerging shapes such as screws, cups, spectacles, human faces, turtles, and dinosaurs, among others. It would take quite a long time from the predator man to settle in a specific place, giving up transhumance in order to take advantage of the richness of the soil, of a fertile land, and of plenty of water and game. If that primitive man enters sailing along the edge of the coast of Malaga and then traveling inwards, it is clear that the sight of this landscape convinced him to settle here. And here was settled such an important colony, so as to have a chief to whom dedicate the funeral monument of Menga, or families worthy of the monument of Viera. Both of them are the best conserved dolmens, according to the former General Director for UNESCO, Dr. Amadou Mather Magbo, who cried astonished by such a sight. Once fulfilled the need for a funeral monument with the apparent simpleness of Menga and Viera, now man searches for beauty in the dolmen of the Romeral. A good example is the false dome prelude of the Renaissance domes, which makes clear the search for beauty. All this together made our dolmens to be known as the Parthenon of antiquity. The dolmen of Menga is 4,500 years old. It is a structure consisting of huge stones megaliths set vertically in 3 rows. The 20 side stones from the walls and the 3 in the middle are the pillars that hold up 5 huge slabs that constitute the ceiling. The estimated weight of one of them is 108,000 kilograms, being 6 meters wide, 4 meters high, and 25 meters deep. This dolmen, discovered in 1930 by the Viera brothers, was built 4,000 years ago and consists of a 27-stone corridor which gets into the funeral chamber where the deceased people of the time were buried. It is placed next to Menga dolmen. It takes its name from the nearby state. It was also discovered by the Ayer brothers, but in 1905. It dates from the 1800 year before Christ. A 23-meter long gallery leads to a great chamber having a false dome, which is considered to be the first sample of human architecture in Europe, parallel to the Greek treasure of Ayer in Mycenae. There is a small funeral chamber at the back. When building these funeral monuments, the skillful architects positioned them to face the crag, nowadays known as the Lover's Crag, from where the sun rises in Antequera. Curiously, the Roman, Arab and Christian graveyards do also face toward the same point. And Rome desires to conquer Europe, made it span over the Iberian Peninsula, where the Iberians and Phoenicians had previously set up important settlements. Rome, in an almost pacific way, was conquering all the area, thus becoming the Baetica province, one of the most important provinces of the empire. They set up a town among the important towns of Astigi, Hispalis, Malacca and Cordoba, which they called Antiquaria, maybe due to the abundance of historical remains. They established here because its location in the south of Baetica was considered essential, thus in the middle of the four major towns mentioned above, regardless of some other important population centers, such as Singhilia Barba. That Antiquaria was located in the highest point of the settlement, ruling the roads to modern Malaga, Cordoba and Sevilla, as it happens today. This is evidenced by the Roman thermal baths near Santa Maria's church, which used to be built in the outskirts. This Antiquaria was so important that it was surrounded by Roman villas, where important families used to live. These villas supplied cereals and exquisite olive oil from Antequera to Rome, the town of the Seven Hills, which should have one more built up, with the remains from the pots which carried the Spanish oil to Rome. The villas were decorated with large ponds, beautiful statues as the Febo de Antequera, the bust of Germanica and of the Venus of Antequera. Before continuing, we should mention the close Singhilia Barba, one of the most important towns in the Baetica, which enjoyed special municipal charters and privileges, and had important temples, markets, and amphitheatres whose stones have been used for the reconstructed Roman amphitheatre of Malaga, and enormous ponds where they performed naval battles. It also had remains of one of the main Roman roads which crossed Baetica. It is precisely in Singhilia Barba where we find an amazing witness, the ashes from the Goth invasion which razed it to grounds. Antequera, which had resisted the first Arab invasion in the 2nd century, couldn't oppose. Like the rest of Hispania, the Goth invasion coming from the north. The Goth reign ended up in 711. A powerful Arab army entered the peninsula via Tarifa. The Arabs, similarly to what the Romans had done before, conquered the land in a military tour. We shouldn't forget the decay of the Roman Empire and the Visigothic weakening. The new conquerors, as the Romans had done before, became aware of the strategic importance of Antequera, from now on called Medina Antequera, placed in the crossroads from Cordoba to Malaga and from Sevilla to Granada. The importance of Antequera was kept in mind by the different Arab kings and kinglets who after the beginning of the reconquest in Covadonga and the expansion of it to the kingdoms of Leon, Castilla, Asturias and Aragon, and after the establishment of different agreements with the divided kingdoms of the Muslim Spain, the different Arab kin and kinglets always reminded the importance of Antequera leaving this strategic enclave of Antequera out of all cession and agreement. In 1410, when the last agreement signed up by the King of Castilla and the King of Granada was on the verge of finishing, Infant Don Fernando was appointed master of his nephew, the future Juan II. The infant was considered a virtuous, just and generous man. That's why several noblemen proposed him as King of Castilla. Don Fernando felt indignant about it, and he called the noblemen and made them pledge allegiance to the child king. Nevertheless, he decided to resume the conquest of land, setting his camp in Córdoba in April 1410. There, he started considering which town he should occupy, whether Antequera, Chever, or Gibraltar. Finally, after a dream on which a beautiful woman appeared, she was Santa Eufemia, he woke his captains up and stated, "May the sun rise in Antequera, and may be what God wishes, and worry about it later," a very famous saying in all Spain. From then on, although few know its true origin. The infant decided them to visit Marina Antequera, and so he called a large army asking, and as it was usual with Christian conquerors, banners like the standard of Baeza, which was brought from a monastery in Leon, and the sword of San Fernando from Seville, which he received kneeling in what he is known from the Humiladero. Apart from that, he also asked for the banners of Santiago Castilla Leon. He ordered to build a platform to overcome the fortress walls. Finally, on 16 September 1410, Antequera surrendered after offering those inhabitants who wanted to go to Granada, respecting their possessions or the lives of the elderly and children. These people from Antequera set up the Antequerela neighborhood in Granada. Once Narvaez was conquered, Infante Don Fernando appointed Don Rodrigo de Narvaez governor, whose remains rest in San Sebastian Church. Don Rodrigo, who had been the Infante's assistant and was also a very virtuous person, gave the town its coat of arms, a vase of lilies representing the religious order of La Terrassa, to which Don Fernando belonged. The vase is between a castle and a rampant lion. We can read the legend ATQ, that is Antequera, at the top of PSA, at the bottom, for his love. Then Don Rodrigo, following the Christian tradition, proceeded to appoint a patron saint for the town, who would act as an intermediary between the town and our Lord. Patron saints were usually the saint of the day, but on that date of 16th of September, that were several names so, their names were written in different pieces of paper, and those for 3 consecutive times the name elected was of Santa Eufemia Virgin, a martyr from Chalcedonia in Central Asia, who suffered martyrdom in 300 AD. Antequera fulfilled Infante Don Fernando's expectations, because from there, and with soldiers set in Ilara, Archidona and Malaga, were conquered, ending up the reconquest in 1492 with the capture of Granada. Due to all this help to Castilla and collaborations to the common project, which would end up in the Spain of the Catholic kings, Antequera received the title of the city in 1441 and the titles of very noble and very loyal, as well as prerogatives granted by Juan II and confirmed later by the Catholic kings, by the daughter Juana and by Carlos V. Many of these privileges are kept in the municipal record office, built over an old public granary. Previously, the Omiciacos decree favored the overpopulation of Antequera, becoming later in time the 9th populated town in Spain, a rich and thriving town which rapidly improved economically, having been the lands of La Vega without farming for a long time, and at the same time it improved in different fields. The rich families emerging favored the arrival of many religious orders, which stayed in big churches and convents. One of the most important things was the building of Santa María de la Asunción, the first Renaissance building in Andalusia, which would host a famous professorship of Latin and grammar, which gave Antequera the name of Andalusian Athens. This name was not gratuitous because of this collegiate church, differing from a cathedral, just in the latter is ruled by a bishop. Latinists and grammarians from Antequera met and were leading figures of the Spanish Golden Century, 16th and 17th century. Pedro Espinosa, Juan Ruiz de Vilches, Martín de la Plaza, Cristobalina Fernández de Alarcón, Rodrigo de Carvajal, and so on. It had great consequences from the arrival to Antequera of the second printing press in Andalusia, brought by an Nebrija nephew, to the recovery and publishing of texts by Tales de Mileto, Plato, and all the ancient authors, and in a more practical sense and with greater consequences was the creation of the first archaeological museum of Spain. People wanted to separate the two big squares which appeared in front of Santa Maria, the more learned one, Los Escribanos, right in front of it, and the new square, more popular, representing different trades, by building up an ark for which they asked for a license and funds. The king granted this license in 1583, providing that they put Roman commemorative stone plaques and inscriptions on its walls so that it wouldn't be used in buildings of different kinds. Ruiz de Vilches was the leader of this initiative, which prevented the loss of many important remains for the understanding of the Roman Antequera. The ark was raided. The inscription statues were put, one of them an Hercules statue that gives the ark its name. Under this statue on both sides we find the symbols of the town, the castle, the lion, and the vase of lilies. This temple of Santa Maria held a great exhibition celebrating 500th anniversary of La Colegiata de Antequera in 2003. The temple became a museum holding religious and artistic works belonging to a period of 500 years. It was one of the most important exhibitions to be held in the history of this town. A copy of the original San Pedro canopy was made for the event. Nowadays, the old Renaissance temple is used for cultural exhibitions, concerts, and religious celebrations, such as the procession of the patron saint, Santa Eufemia. The world enclosure and urban plans provide the town with different gates. The oldest one is Malaga Gate, placed in the Virgen de Espera chapel. It is nearby La Alcazaba and holds in its inside a portrait of Virgin Mary. Granada Gate is erected in the exits to Malaga and Granada. It's a building belonging to the 18th century. A Virgin of Rosary is kept in its upper niche. Antequera commemorated in 1998 the 215th anniversary of the Royal Fair of August. The old gate of Estepa of the 18th century was rebuilt for this special event. It is located next to the bull ring. We can see a sculpture of Virgen del Rosario and a tile of Santa Eufemia on both sides of the gate. Antequera has one of the most universal love legends, even older than Romeo and Juliet by Shakespeare. But Christopher Columbus described in his Diary of America that he found a crack similar to the Lover's Crack in the road from Malaga and Granada. And Columbus was previous to the English writer. The legend is about two young lovers, the Christian Tello and the Muslim Tasgona, who met in the dungeons of a town near to the city of El Torcao. They ran away from the Muslim town, but they were discovered by the guard following them to the crack, which lays on the roads into Antequera. The lovers climbed to the top, and being threatened by the soldiers, they preferred to throw themselves embraced rather than giving up, because they knew they wouldn't be allowed to be together. From then on, that crack is known as the Lover's Crack, being possible to contemplate the maid's beautiful face lying on the land. This is a very well-known story by youngsters from Antequera. We mentioned before that the spreading of noble families and the royal support allowed the building of churches and convents occupied by many religious orders. That resulted in a conglomeration of religious buildings pertaining to all styles. One of them is the primitive San Salvador, rebuilt at the beginning of the 19th century by the local mayor Guerrero Muñoz to commemorate the first Christian church over what had been an Arab mosque in the castle enclosure. Apart from that, we also find Santa Maria with a splendid modular coffered ceiling, San Juan and San Sebastian, which would become a collegiate church once Antequera urban center was moved to present San Sebastian Square, and it was done with the town council San Francisco, El Carmen, Santiago, Santa Eufemia, La Victoria, Madre de Dios, Santa Clara, La Trinidad, Los Remedios, and the old Franciscan monastery, present town hall, San Juan de Dios, Santo Domingo, Santa María de Jesús, San Miguel. Most of them were convent churches surrounded by great vegetable gardens, which little by little were incorporated back to the town, and it was enlarged. Some churches, as San Isidro, La Caridad or Las Huérfanas, disappeared with the passing of time, but some others were enlarged, as La Inmaculada and San Salvador, making Antequera being known as the town of the 30 churches. The Spanish town with more churches per inhabitant keeps a number of them. Many have disappeared with the passing of time, especially chapels. Cerro de la Luz Chapel has been recently rebuilt for tourist purposes. The popular San Pedro neighborhood takes its name from its church, which is one of the Renaissance symbols of the town. The church started being built in 1522. It has had several improvements and enlargements until it took its actual form in the middle of the 18th century. The high altar canopy comes from Santa Maria when it was decided to share out its religious and artistic works and altar pieces at the end of the 18th century due to its closing. It is an essentially Renaissance temple, although we can find some Gothic element in some parts. San Pedro is a compilation museum of old churches. There it is found an old altarpiece which dominated the disappeared church of San Isidro. It consists of a sculptured composition with San Isidro Labrador and Santa María la Cabeza, which were processioned up to the middle of the 20th century. A simple altarpiece gives shelter to Virgen del Consuelo, which gives name to the lay brotherhood, which goes on procession to Good Thursday. It's the Madonna of the 18th century. This Salesian family has its worshipping Santa in San Pedro, apart from its school. The Virgin Auxiliadora dominates its altarpiece. Believers worship it around the year, but especially in May when they go on procession. The Cristo of Misericordia, which is also taken as procession on Good Thursday, is placed in the central altarpiece of the Chapel of Animos. The Cristo de las Penas, a crucified sculpture of the 17th century, is worshipped in his canopy in the aisle of San Pedro. Next to it, we find the baptismal font, where important people from Antequera like Pedro Espinosa or Cristobal Toral were baptized. A beautiful Madonna pertaining to the end of the 18th century is kept in a small canopy. It is carried on the Cristo of la Misericordia religious float during the Holy Week. The Enchidero neighborhood, located at the end of Cuesta Real, maintains its parish church of San Juan Bautista. Its Renaissance style is important because of the height of its canopy and the stonework inside the church. An image of San Juan dominates the high altar around the year, except in May when it is dominated by El Señor de la Salud y de las Aguas. The new patron saint of Antequera since 2004 has its own chapel. It's the main image of the Royal Brotherhood del Señor de la Salud y de las Aguas. On the last Saturday of April, this image is brought down from its chapel to the high altar, when believers offer him 2 novenas. The Sunday following, the 18th of May, it is carried on procession. Along the Church of San Juan canopies are erected belonging to the old Brotherhood of Via Sacra, represented by a Madonna and an image of Christ. A canopy keeps all images pertaining to the no longer existing chapel of La Virgen de la Cabeza, such as Santa Ana, San Roque, and the Virgin of la Cabeza itself. Catholic kings provided that the Franciscan monks erected in our town their monastery of San Solo in the 16th century. Nowadays, the monastery has become a town library, and the Church of San Francisco is kept by Los Estudiantes Brotherhood, which goes on procession on Holy Monday. The Virgin of la Vera Cruz, main image of the Brotherhood, dominates the chapel of the high altar canopy. On the left top side, Sant'Olio dominates the Franciscan church. On both sides we find 2 paintings, which are copies of Rubens' works. The Isle of Evangelia keeps several canopies and chapels, as the one where the Cristo Verde is worshipped. It is an image pertaining to the middle of the 16th century and is carrying on procession nowadays. Many students venerate this image. The image of Santa Elena is located next to the Chapel of La Sangre. An image of Nuestro Padre Jesús Nazareno de la Sangre presides the chapel of its name. It is an splendid image of the 16th century carried on procession under pallium on Holy Monday. In the past, it was carried to the Cerro de la Cruz by penitents. We can observe the images of San Silvestre and San Diego de Alcalá along the main nave. Nowadays, the main church in Antequera is San Sebastian Church, whose building began in the 16th century. There was a project which attempted to turn this church into a cathedral. Its Renaissance style contrasts with the Baroque Madeira tower, which added to the Renaissance fountain and the Arch of Nazareno constitute the artistic center of town and a central point of Andalusian roads. When entering the church, we find a canopy holding one of the most venerated images of the town. It was made by the sculptor Andrés de Carvajal, and he donated it in return for being buried as a priest, receiving privileges as being a real priest. These days, he is remembered every Holy Wednesday. Next to this sculpture, we find the Virgin del Mayor Dolor. The high altar of the church has a tabernacle made by Antonio Moedano. It is precisely in its inside where we find the image of Santa María de la Asunción. We can observe along the nave and aisle of the church different canopies which hold images by important artists as Pedro Roldán, Pablo de Rojas or Pedro de Mena. Among them are sculptures of San Sebastian, Santa Catalina, San Cristobal, San Pedro, and the countenances of Christ and Virgin Mary. The Sacrarian chapel contains an interesting image of Christ with the name of Las Animas, and outside under a canopy where there's an image of Christ widely venerated in town, El Cristo de los Milagros. Among the paintings we may point out the Transfiguración de Cristo en el Monte de Tabor by Antonio Moedano, San Francisco y el Hermano León attributed to Cano, and Zurbarán, or La Paciencia de Job by Valdés Leal. However, there is an element that distinguishes the whole, the Tower of San Sebastian, which was built by the master builder Andrés Bargueño at the beginning of the 18th century. It stands out its exceptional weather vane known as El Angelote, the Big Angel, which holds in its breast the relics of the patron saints of Antequera, Santa Eufemia. Two brothers known as Los Migueles founded the old chapel of San Miguel at the beginning of the 16th century. It is a parish church since 1822. The church has been modified in several occasions. The Arcángel San Miguel dominates the high altar of the parish church. At that time it held images coming from the old convent of La Magdalena, such as San Francisco by Pedro Mena. El Santo Cristo de las Penas is one of the images venerated in a side chapel next to the banner of the Brotherhood of El Rocío of Antequera, which takes this church as its see. The architect Diego de Vergara, who directed the building of the Cathedral of Malaga, also built the San Agustin Church in the middle of the 16th century. Its high 17th century tower observes the main street in Antequera, Infante Don Fernando Street. The high altar offers an interesting collection of paintings by Antonio Moedano, portraying the Lord Cavalry and the life of San Agustin. The Brotherhood of La Pollinica goes on procession every Palm Sunday and celebrates masses inside this church. Its representative images, Jesús a su entrada en Jerusalén, Jesús orando en el huerto, and la Virgen de la Consolación, are venerated in the church chapels. Going on with the rest of the interesting views, we can observe a remarkable Santa Barbara. The Temple of San Agustin possesses images belonging to the extant Brotherhood of Santo Crucifijo, as we can see in one of the chapels where we find la Virgen de la Soledad and el Santo Entierro de Cristo. The Franciscan monks arrived to our town in 1519 and stayed in the monastery of Las Suertes, located in the outskirts of the town. In 1607 they moved into town and settled in the monastery of Los Remedios, which now holds the town hall. This Marian sanctuary venerates the image of Los Remedios, who is the Marian patron saintess of Antequera since 1546. The legend tells that Apostle St. James Santiago came to Las Suertes monastery to hand in a Marian image being received by Fray Martín de las Cruces. The high altar stands out because of the golden carvings displayed at the end of the temple. It is remarkable the Virgin of Los Angeles of the presbytery carved by the artist Andrés de Carvajal. The Baroque style is present in the vestments and the movement of angels. In the nearby canopies we can see San Jose and San Antonio, the former by Carvajal too. Looking up, we can admire the paintings of the dome and the barrel vault of the central nave. The main themes of these distempered paintings are Virgin Mary, St. Joseph and St. Anthony. Walking along its aisles, we can find the curious image of the Virgen Dormida, the Asleep Virgin, as well as San Antón and Virgen del Rosario. There is an element which revives traditions of Antequera. This is a sarcophagus which keeps the remains of Blessed Marina Alonso, a very pious 16th century woman whose incorrupt body rests in peace in this church. It is said that if we knock with faith on the urn, she will answer us. A 15th century crucified Christ, remaining from the old monastery Las Suertes, is placed in the Epistola nave. Capuchin monks arrived in town in 1613 and still are there. The sculpture of San Francisco dominates the canopy, which leads to the vestibule. The monument El Triunfo de la Inmaculada stands opposite it. Before entering the church, we found the chapel of Cristo del Perdón, which was widely venerated in the past. Unbelievers called it when these were earthquakes. The present image was made by Francisco Palma Burgos in 1940. It replaces the original one by Andrés Carvajal, which was consumed by the fires during the Spanish Civil War. Several paintings are displayed in the high altar. Their main theme is Immaculada, venerated by San Francisco and San Buenaventura. There are San Franciscan monks around them. Near the presbytery, the image of Divina Pastora is venerated. This image is carried on the procession of Corpus Christi. Next to it, there is an image of the blessed Capuchin Diego José de Cádiz and a painting of the patron saintess Santa Eufemia. Before leaving, we can admire a crucified Christ by the former teacher of Pedro Espinosa High School, Emilio del Moral Herranz of Antequera, and an oratory with the Capuchin martyrs. The religious Carmelitas Calzadas nuns stay in the Convento of la Encarnación, located next to the Collegiate Church of San Sebastián. The nuns there maintain their way of living, venerating Virgin del Carmen and San Elias, the symbols of its order. This quiet church represents the influence of the Granada Church with some Moorish nuances. Its coat of arms stands on the convent church. Along its canopies we find the Virgin of Carmen by Diego Márquez y Vega, one of the several images of San José by the sculptor Andrés Carvajal, and San Elias, as it is common with this religious order. In fact, there is a sculpture of this saint at the entrance of the church, of which it is said that when his sword falls down, a heavy stone falls in town. Augustine's nuns arrived to the town of El Torcal in 1520 and they have stayed here until 2004. Cristóbal García erected the present church after the devastating fire in 1745. Its special tower is one of the most beautiful in Antequera. The inner temple stands out because of the curved lines of the outside of the ground plan, not very common in convent churches. The Virgin of Monte Agudo dominates the high altar, whose original image came to town from Flanders as the gift of the Queen Isabel Clara Eugenia. From there, we can observe the delicate and graceful dome of the church. Among the different canopies, we should remark the Cristo de las Limpias, a modern image of the middle of the 20th century, but widely venerated. We can admire the images Santa Rita, San Agustin, among others. The church and convent of Santa Catalina de Sena is inhabited by Dominican nuns. Inside we find the venerated Fray Martín de Porres, popularly known as Friar Broom. It is a very loved image in town. The Virgin of Rosario dominates the high altar. This image was linked to Madre Carmen del Niño Jesús, a nun from this town. The Brotherhood of El Socorro, known as Arriba because it is on the higher part of the town, looks after the old Franciscan church, a school of Santa María de Jesús. This brotherhood venerates one of the oldest and most loved Marian images of the town, La Virgen del Socorro Coronada. La Virgen del Socorro dominates the portichuelo, word that comes from portico, potico, and cielo, heaven. The canopy that holds an image is one of the most outstanding in the city of El Torcal. The image is decorated with plasterwork and angels that accompany the Virgin in her ascension to heaven. high altar contains two canopies with the other two sacred images of the Brotherhood of El Socorro, Our Father Jesus assisted by Cyrene and the Holy Cross of Jerusalem. This brotherhood, performs the famous beggars penitents carrying their religious floats, go up running by the steep streets. This brotherhood is restoring the old convent because they aim to open the museum to exhibit the different belongings of the brotherhood with some as artistic inheritance of Antequera. Next to this church we find the Portichuelo chapel holding a painting of La Virgen del Socorro. In the past, processions passed by here. This portico is remarkable for its exceptional decorating style. Another point of pilgrimage for these processions of La Virgen del Socorro is the Chapel of the Cruz Blanca. It was built in the middle of the 18th century and it links the Virgin devotion with the part of town next to Córdoba. The Santiago neighborhood also had its Socorro Chapel and it keeps an old painting of the Virgen del Portichuelo. The Brotherhood of La Paz, known as the Abajo, has been rival for many centuries of Arriba every Good Friday. This brotherhood keeps the old Dominic Basilica, who started to be built at the end of the 16th century. The brotherhood has restored the inside of the church, recovering all its splendor. The crowned Virgen de la Paz dominates the high altar of the Church of Antequera. It is a beautiful Marian sculpture carried out by the sculptor Miguel Marquez Garcia. Before the high altar there are two canopies that hold the other two images of the Abajo Brotherhood, the lost Jesus child and the sweet name of Jesus. One of the restored chapels is that Santa Rosa de Lima, where it is located one of the previous images of the Brotherhood. The Chapel of the Sweet Name has gone back to its origins with the old canopies that have been kept in the Municipal Museum. The image of the Christ of the Buena Muerte and La Paz dominates a canopy in the chapel. An aisle of Santo Domingo holds the Virgin of Rosario, a Marian image which is venerated during October. There are a number of legends around this image, such as that of the clapper fallen from the veil and that of the epitome shown in an outside painting. The monks of San Juan de Dios founded a monastery in 1667, a church linked to the town hospitals. In fact, after the departure of these monks, it was the municipal hospital of Antequera until the end of the 20th century. Nowadays, it is used by the town hall as an assembly room for special events. The canopy of the high altar is presided by the images of the Inmaculada Concepción, accompanied by Parents San Joaquin and Santa Ana. One of the outstanding elements of this Baroque church is its dome on its transept, as well as its barrel vault, richly decorated with plasterwork. Inside the church we can find images of San Juan de Dios, San Rafael or La Virgen Milagrosa, who is widely venerated by the hospital staff of the town. The Philippenses nuns of Nuestra Señora de los Dolores live at present in the old school of La Compañía de Jesús, the Jesuits. The building of the church Nuestra Señora de Loreto started in 1693. The Divina Pastora dominates the high altar. On its higher part there is a crucified Christ coming from San Sebastian Church. Along the church there are different canopies with images of the Virgin of Buen Consejo, Virgen de los Dolores, Virgen del Tránsito, and El Señor de la Humildad, belonging to the Old Brotherhood, which had its office next to the Convento of Victoria. When entering the town from Malaga or Granada, we find the most Baroque square in Antequera, Santiago Square. The parish church of the patron saint of Spain is located here. The high altar is presided by the Virgen de la Salud, representative image of an old brotherhood. Its small image which was carried on procession till the end of the 20th century. One of the chapels of Santiago Church gives shelter to an old image of the Virgen del Trabajo. According to the oral tradition, it is said to be the original Virgen de la Paz. Next to the Church of Santiago, we find the convent church of Santa Eufemia, patron saintess of the town since 1410. The master builder, Cristóbal García, built this church. The legend tells that at the end of the 16th century, an old lady from Antequera offered a candle to a painting of Santa Eufemia which existed in Santiago Square, and praying she asked, "Santa Eufemia, my saintess, who will look after you after I die?" And it is said that she answered, "Some nuns will come to look after me." And that's the way it happened. A few days after the lady's death, the nuns of the Minima order came to town in 1661 to raise a convent to the saintess Santa Eufemia. Andrés Carvajal carved in 1757 the image that presides the high altar. It is the representative image of the Santa Eufemia Brotherhood, which celebrates its feast every September and presides the altar of the Corpus Christi celebration. We find images of San José, San Francisco de Paula, la Virgen de la Esperanza in the different canopies. We can also observe La Virgen de los Dolores dating back to 1745. The nuns of the Minima order pray in the low choir, where we can see a copy of Murillo's paintings about Santa Justa and Rufina, but representing Santa Eufemia and Santa Barbara. A curious sitting Virgen del Socorro, known as Madre Correctora, supervises the nuns' praise. Nuns from the Clarissa order live in the Church of Lens at present. Coming from the old convent of Santa Clara, these nuns occupied the old convent of Carmelitas Descalzas after Mendizabal sale of church lands. The high altar has both paintings and sculptures, being worth of mention Santa Clara adoring Christ's Father. The church transept possesses a splendid dome which stands out because of its plasterwork decorations spreading over the barrel vault of the church. Servita's Brotherhood venerates its representative sacred images in this convent church. El Señor atado a la columna was carved by Andrés de Carvajal and belongs to a trilogy about the Lord's Passion. Jesús Caído was created by the outstanding sculptor José de Mora, and it was emphasized by Carvajal himself. The beautiful Marian image of La Virgen de los Dolores Coronada came out of Miguel Márquez's gouges. Nuns from the religious order of Las Carmelitas Descalzas founded their convent in 1632. The present church of San Jose was built between 1707 and 1734. Inside the church, it is remarkable a painting by Pedro Atanasio Bocanegra about Virgin Mary with a child, and the saints Miguel, Gabriel, Ildefonso and Catalina. Nuns from this order keep the Church of San Jose and the Convent Museum of Las Descalzas. Santa Teresa devotees wanted to exhibit artistic works possessed by them throughout centuries in a commendable museum. The Church of El Carmen was built between the 16th and the 17th centuries. Its canopy is one of the bastions and references of the Andalusian Baroque canopy work of the 18th century, which led to its cataloguing as national monument. The Virgin of El Carmen presides this wonderful wooden canopy. The high altar is profusely decorated with saints and angels. Apart from this splendid canopy, it is also remarkable the impressive Mudejar coffered ceiling, dated from the beginning of the 17th century. San Elias canopy, located next to the high altar, is a symbol of the Carmelite religious order. The side chapels of Gospel are dedicated to Jesús Nazareno, Virgen de la Piedad and San Jose, placed in the chapel of Sacrary, where the image of Cristo de la Paz stands out. This 17th century image belonged to the old parish church of El Salvador.
This is a sculptural composition of La Quinta Angustia, a painting of Santa Eufemia and Santa Maria Maddalena de Pacis, stand out in the chapel of La Epistola. The Santo Entierro Brotherhood, which goes on procession on Good Friday, has a chapel venerating the images of Virgin de la Soledad and the Santo Entierro, an articulated image which was venerated in the past in the procession of Christ's transferred from the cross to the sepulchre. In this chapel there is a canopy which holds the image of Virgen del Socorro, a small image brought to town by a servant of King Juan II. The Trinity Order came to town in 1637. From then on the church has changed in several occasions. There were great changes in its inside after a fire in 1935. A new high altar canopy had to be made. At the top of it, the Holy Trinity presides the church. The Señor del Rescate venerated in this temple is a loved image in town and representative image of the Brotherhood, with the same name, and goes on procession every Holy Tuesday. On the first Friday of March, believers from Antequera go massively praying to kiss its feet. The Virgin de la Piedad is also a representative image of the Brotherhood. It's a Marian image restored by Antonio Duvé. Next to it, we find the image of Del Señor de la Columna, which was also carried on procession in the past. Apart from these venerated images, we can also admire the images of the Blessed Juan Bautista de la Concepción, San José, San Miguel de los Santos or Virgen de la Valvanera. The nuns of the congregation founded by Madre Carmen del Niño Jesús recovered the old monastery previously owned by the Minimus order in 1884. These nuns settled in this convent, beginning their work of teaching and assistance to those in need. The church and school names are La Victoria. The church keeps images of the friars' time, among them one of San Francisco de Paula. There is also an image of the Señor Resucitado, which is carried on procession on Resurrection Sunday. The town of convents and churches contains examples of holiness. One of these people was Madre Carmen del Niño Jesús, now in process of beatification. Her remains and personal belongings are visited by loyal devotees every day. The nuns of La Victoria look after the rooms where Madre Carmen lived, personal belongings, furniture, penitential objects, and venerated images, a treasure for devotion. Her believers placed their requests under the pillow of the bed, where she died on the 9th of November in 1899. The congregation of Terciarias Franciscanas nuns following Madre Carmen del Niño Jesús set up a school and a teacher training college in an old hospital. This school possesses a modern designed church. Modern images of Christ, Virgin Immaculada and San Jose contrast with the 18th century style of most churches. It is remarkable the covered ceiling of the Immaculada Church. Brothers of La Salle came to our town due to the initiative and support of the Muñoz de Rojas family. The school in Obispo Street has a simple chapel, a Virgin de la Antigua, an image of San Juan Bautista de La Salle, and an image of Jesus' child are venerated by the students of this school. Capuchin monks are parishes of the most modern church in town with the name of San Salvador. Several images and paintings are placed along the humble church. Antequera is a town with living churches, and it is shown by the Veronica Chapel built to venerate a painting of the Veronica's cloth. It is daily visited by its believers, who go there in pilgrimage in August. Alongside these religious buildings, which represent only some of those existing in town, great palaces and ancestral homes emerged and originated the urban richness of the town. We find houses that keep the same as they were 500 years ago, and within the inside of the palace of the Marquess of the Escalonias, we also find where different kings of Spain stayed in their frequent visits to our town. Still a crossroads of Andalusia, and modern buildings erected by Aníbal González, the builder of Plaza de España in Seville, and buildings with a modernistic style, such as Torquil Theatre Cinema and Savings Bank of Antequera, presently Unicaja. Convents, churches, palaces, and ancestral homes turn Antequera into a melting pot of styles, arousing the experts, learned, and tourist admiration. The palace of the Marquess of Villadarias dates back to the 18th century. The Marquess it takes its names from, was related to the Spanish court during the reign of Philip V. His Majesty stayed in this palace during a journey to our town in 1730. The courtyard follows the style of the noble houses of Antequera, with its convent style, the square section, the columns of red marble from El Torcal, and its arches. The palace of the Marquis of La Peña de los Enamorados was erected between the 16th and the 20th centuries. Queen Elizabeth II stayed in it during a visit in 1862. The Order of Padre Carmelitas restored it between 1947 and 1949 to turn it into a school as it is being used nowadays. The palace of the Marquis of the Escalonias started to be built in the 16th century. In its first years it was the center of the town development because it was the main thoroughfare of Antequera after the Reconquest. The Arab influence is shown in the fortress adjacent to Álvaro de Oviedo Street, as well as its inner cypresses and myrtles. It keeps intact its outer facade from the 15th century. The palace is a museum of historical memories promoted by its descendants. We can find the tomb of one of the conquerors in the courtyard. There's an interesting family collection of paintings and different works in the rooms and corridors. The old palace of the Count of Pinofil has become a hotel with the same name. It was built at the beginning of the 18th century, in the middle of the Baroque movement. Its inner part has become a splendid museum which maintains the palace's original style with decorations of the time. The house of the Ramirez family is an example of an old museum house which has been now restored to hold public offices and private housings. This 18th century building holds now the Agrarian Council office. The house of the Serre family breaks with the style of Antequera houses of the time, carrying the hallmark of the Plaza de España in Seville. After being lived in by an outstanding family of the town for almost a century, it holds nowadays the local treasury office. The house of the Count of Colchado combines Baroque and neoclassical style. After some years of abandonment, has been restored as a block of flats and offices. The house of the Barón de Sabasona belonged to the Tejada family during the 18th century. This residence hosted the local poet Trinidad de Rojas. The house of the Colarte family belongs to the County Council office of Malaga. It is an 18th century building which keeps in its inside furniture and works belonging to the 18th and 19th centuries. During the 20th century, it served as residence of important visitors, like the General Director of UNESCO, Mr. Bao. Now it is planned the change of part of its inner side into a museum of modern art dedicated to the painter of the town Cristobal Toral and other modern artists. The Torcal Cinema Theatre was built between 1933 and 1934. Its architectural style is catalogued into the Andalusian rationalism. It is included in the Art Deco style, which influenced so greatly the Europe of the 1930s. Antequera's Savings Bank built its headquarters in 1932. The building comprises Mannerist, Baroque and Neoclassical trends, showing some sculptures by Paco Palma. Nowadays, it's the head office of Unicaja in Antequera. In general, the patrimony of Antequera is very well kept, as the restoration of the old fortress of Antequera proves. But the first Spanish archaeological museum of the Ark of the Giants has been continued in some other extremely important museums in Antequera. Thus, the Municipal Museum, according to Sanchez Bella, the most important museum out of state rule, keeps from Roman inscriptions to masterpieces such as the Efebo de Antequera, the Nero Germánico, the Venus de Antequera, paintings by Moedano, Bocanegra, Correa, and the impressive sculpture San Francisco by Pedro de Mena, as well as different religious items and exceptional priceless paintings by the artist pride of Antequera, Andalusia and Spain, Cristobal Toral. The Las Descalzas Museum also contains extraordinary religious works. As a more modern museum, we have the Bullfighting Museum placed at the Bull Ring and built in 1848, which keeps a singular collection of posters, bullfighting garments, the last one in the one worn by Curro Romero in the Goyesque fight on the 150th anniversary of the Bull Ring. The Ark of Giants was built in 1585 as an open-air museum where all the people from Antequera could contemplate the beauty of the old Roman villas. It is called of Giants due to the enormous statues which used to culminate the portico and marked out the entrance. The old palace of Nájera hosts the Municipal Museum from 1972. It is an 18th century building which has been a palace, a school and now a museum. Undoubtedly, the main exhibit displayed in the museum is the Efebo de Antequera. It is a hollow bronze sculpture pertaining to the 1st century Anno Domini. Professor García Bellido described it as the most beautiful old exhibit of the peninsula. It appeared on the 29th June 1955, buried in the rich fertile land of Antequera. A plough found this Roman statue. It has been exhibited in the 8th National Archaeological Conference, in the 5th anniversary of the city of Berlin, where it was regarded as the main Roman exhibit of the 1st century, in the Universal Exposition of Seville in 1992, and in the Muestra of Hispania Romana in Rome, Mérida, and Zaragoza. Antequera is a town that keeps treasures. One of the last discoveries has been the beautiful Venus de Antequera. It's a marble head found in the Villa de la Estación. Apart from it, some other sculptures are shown from this villa, which keeps the best Roman mosaics after the city of Mérida's ones. Another sculpture appearing in that villa was this bust of Germanico. But the Municipal Museum especially exhibits a great display of the artistic and religious patrimony from the conquest of Antequera in 1410 to the present moment. It is remarkable the town banner, which portrays the kingdoms of Castilla and Leon, and the vase of lilies of the Terrassa Ora, of which Infante Don Fernando was devout. From the times of the Reconquest, it is also kept the castle of Santa Eufemia, a religious clothing worn by the priest who celebrates the Mass honoring patron saint Santa Eufemia on 16th September. It is made with muslin flag taken from the Moors. The Municipal Museum keeps the most artistic religious exhibits of the Antequera churches supplied by the church. The pictorial collection possesses great paintings from outstanding painters such as Antonio Moedano, Pedro Atanasio Bocanegra, and Juan Correa. There have always been important silversmiths in Antequera, from here and from other places of Andalusia. Silversmiths such as Félix Gálvez, Gabriel de Navarrete, or José Ruiz are the makers of some of the exhibited Paris crosses, monstrances, pyxes, chalices, and other religious items which have been selected to be shown in important exhibitions throughout Spain. The silversmith school of Antequera, as well as one of the Córdoba, were one of the most important ones in Spain. This tradition is continued with the González and Cantos families. Gouache artists are also represented in the museum. Some of the most important exhibits in the different rooms are San Cristóbal, San José, María Magdalena, or Santa Eufemia. Probably one of the most important exhibits is the sculpture San Francisco de Asís, carved in polychrome wood by the outstanding artist Pedro de Mena in the middle of the 16th century. It comes from the extinct convent of La Magdalena, and then it was in the parish church of San Miguel. Its natural size, facial expression, and the will-making of Mena turn it into a referential image of the iconography of San Francisco. The realm of processions has room in the Palace of Nájera. The Brotherhood of Arriba lends crosses, crowns, penitent crowns, which provide an image of the processional realm of Antequera. The antiquity of the museum contrasts with modern art rooms of the painter Cristóbal Toral. His famous painting, The Parcel, approaches the most surprising reality of the author, who won an important prize in the Biennales de São Paulo. Nuns of Las Descalzas convent decided to open a convent museum in 1999 with their artistic religious exhibits kept throughout centuries. The convent museum exhibits paintings by artists such as Antonio Moedano, Pedro Atanasio Bocanegra, or Antonio de Torres. By Moedano we can stand out La Virgen del Silencio or San Miguel Arcángel. By Antonio de Torres, La Virgen de Guadalupe and La Asunción, and as a culminating painting, Santa Teresa de Jesús by Luca Giordano. Religious sculpture represents an important part in Las Descalzas Museum. The main exhibit is a bust of a Madonna made by Pedro de Mena, as well as a San Antonio belonging to his school, and also the fine and simple sculpture Niño Jesús Pastorcillo by the artist Francisco Salcillo. Diego Márquez y Vega is the author of a Virgen del Rosario kept with its crown. Next to it there is an interesting collection of Niños Jesús and Niños Pasionarios and an interesting nativity. The artist Nicolás Fumo stands out for his San Jose, but especially due to a Virgen Inmaculada. We should point out the detail of the angels raising Virgin Mary because of their gestures and expressions. Antonio del Castillo, Miguel Márquez and La Roldana are the authors of a collection of images of Virgin Mary. We found from Dolorosas by Castillo and Márquez to the splendid image of Virgen de Belém by La Roldana. The head of the image of San Jose was snatched out by the storm in 1759. Nuns ordered Andrés de Carvajal the carving of a new image. Now we can see the original head displayed in a small cabinet. The museum is complemented with a selected sample of religious golden and silver smithing. We can also read a handwritten letter by Teresa de Ávila, dated in July 1577. The bull ring of Antequera dates from 1848. There is a bullfighting museum inside, which was opened in 1986. Two sculptures of El Chiclanero and El Barbero recall the opening bullfighting dating back to 1848. The artist Eloy Garcia made them to celebrate the event. Next to them, a great collection of garments, posters, bullheads, among other elements. It is remarkable the Goyesque garment worn by Curro Romero in 1998 in a successful work in which he was given the bull ears and tail as a prize. It was the bullfighting celebrating the 150th anniversary of the bull ring of Antequera. The atmosphere we are trying to convey has favored Antequera to be the cradle of important people who stood out in different subjects, such as literature, art, science, army, sports, and bullfighting. As it is impossible to refer to all them, we should mention some of the most remarkable ones. In literature, the main artists from Antequera were Juan María Capitán, Trinidad de Rojas, Victorina Sáez de Tejada, José Peláez de Tapia, Fermín Requena, José Muñoz Burgos, Rafael de la Linde, José Antonio Muñoz Rojas, Juan del Pino Artacho, Juan Alcaide, Juan Benítez, Carmen Ramos, José Manuel del Pino. In the field of arts, Antonio Moedano de la Gutiérrez, Bernardo Simón de Pereda, Francisco Gutiérrez, Andrés de Carvajal, Diego y Miguel Márquez, Andrés Bargueño, Cristóbal García, Alejandro José Vegas, José María Fernández, Emilio del Moral, Paco Palma, Cristóbal Toral, Antonio Montiel, Martínez Labrador. In music, Calvo, el maestro Moedo, la niña de Antequera, Paco de Antequera, Ángel and Esther Sanzo, Rosa Miranda, Sofía Plata, Carmela Zavala, José Pérez del Pino, Zurita Brothers. In the field of science, Juan Bautista Napolitano, Salvador Artacho, Miguel Rodríguez Lara, Carlos Zurita, Duke of Soria, Antonio Alcalde García, Miguel Zurita, Francisco Javier Muñoz, Diego Aragón, Juan Herrera, Pedro de Rojas, José Ramón Carmona, and an endless list of important figures in medicine and research. Among the historians, Alonso García de Yegros, Cristóbal Fernández, Trinidad de Rojas, José María Fernández, José Ruiz Ortega, José Muñoz Burgos, Manuel Cascales, Juan Manuel Moreno García, Antonio del Bello, Jesús Romero Benítez, Antonio Parejo, Manuel Romero, José Escalante. In the army, Captain Moreno, General Ríos, and the present Brigadier General Antonio Ríos. In the field of religion, Madre Carmen del Niño Jesús, founder of the Congregation of las Terciarias de los Sagrados Corazones de Jesús y María, Father Rafael de Antequera, Bishop Muñoz Herrera, Magistral José Martín Gutiérrez, Deán Francisco García Sarmiento, José Benavides, Chancellor of Montserrat in Rome. In films, theatre, sports and bullfighting, Sally González, Kitty Mamber, Chuzo, Pinto, Cárdenas, Casaus, Calatayud, Paco Checa, Facultades, Antonio García Utrerita, José María Sánchez Paradas, Alberto José Martín. The agrarian wealth of Antequera is made apparent now by the great producing centers of oil, milk, vegetables, or the factories of mantecados, typical sweet made of almonds, suppliers of the royal family, or the factories of the exceptional molletes de Antequera, a typical kind of bread, which are presently known in all Spain. These centers are derived from a successful industrial past when the wool, blankets, and leather were manufactured near the Vila River, which was used as the most ecologic and economical driving force. Apart from that, two industrial estates offer an incomparable location to great distribution centers of goods, and the ones occupied by Bimbo, Mercadona, Aerolex, Dia, Abasto Sur, La Vega, and others. The industrial Antequera is being enlarged by its industrial state and business center, occupying a leading position in Andalusian communications. The logistics sector is essential in Antequera, as it is seen with its industrial growth and new services such as the Andalusian Logistics Center, which is a communication link for southern Europe. Complement to this agrarian and industrial wealth is tourism, a tourism which probably hasn't been justly valued and offers a complement to the Costa del Sol beaches and landscapes. A tourism which offers more than 1,000 accommodations we can find in the splendid 4-star hotels and the Parador Nacional de Turismo in the 3- and 2-star hotels, as well in the cozy, comfortable and well-situated hostels in an almost familiar atmosphere such as Antequera Golf Hotel, Finca Eslava, La Sierra Resort, Las Villas de Antiquaria, Lozano Hotel, among others. Private enterprise has joined local investment building hub hotels which offers the facilities of conference halls, some others which have restored old buildings, as well as those which are located in the enclave of main communication roads. The different hotels and restaurants in Antequera, together with the abundance of sweet shops, some older ones as that of the nuns, La Antequerana, Nieta de Pura Valle, other as Sillero, Rey Mas, Rico, Aguilera, Marengo, or more modern ones as La Dorada, share a gastronomy specific of Antequera, porra antequerana, a cold tomato and old gravy, guisado de pata, pork hands stewed, pio, cod and orange salad, bien me sabe, an almond dessert, mantecados de Antequera, angelorum, asadura en chanfaina, chitterings on stew, migas, fried bread crumbs, or molletes. These are seasonal dishes, but they are offered all year round in the different restaurants, knowing that they are promoted by cuisine experts as Cándido, the bartender of Castilla, Rafael Anson, Luca de Tena, or Juan Alcaide. This cuisine is demanded by those who want something different from the established menu in most restaurants. And for breakfast you will not find anything compared to mollete de Antequera with oil from Antequera, or the delicious red or white chicharrones, pork stracchings, or with butter. It's better to try them than to explain it. We're waiting for you to visit us. Antequera possesses the first golf course in the county, the Hotel Antequera Golf, with 18 holes, which inaugurates a new tourist horizon. The town possesses a historical center, which combines monuments with commerce, supported at present by the open shopping center. Antequera is the crossroads of Andalusia, as the Andalusian highways, as the A92 or the train station of Bobadilla demonstrate. We can add the future to high-speed trains, stops and the Planet Airport. Local news media are in charge of spreading that history, those wonders and those prospects of better future, and they also make Antequera a different town. And such is the case when more than 25 capital cities in Spain didn't have a radio station. Antequera had its EAJ26 Radio Antequera, that is the 26th broadcasting radio in Spain, founded in the 1930s. Previously, in 1918, the newspaper Sol de Antequera came out, which since then, on and without stop, keeps publishing, and that makes it not only the doyen of the press in Malaga, but also one of the oldest in Andalusia and Spain. A few years ago, adapting itself to the new times, it started up its digital edition, one of the most visited ones in Andalusia. As it offers links to local history, art and industry, it is frequently visited by universities, mass media, as well as by individuals. But in Antequera we don't find only work and study. In its teaching centers, where thousands of students attend lessons every year. It also offers exceptional events, including the 12th night parade, the contest of nativity scene representation, the carnival, Holy Week processions, the spring fair and the royal fair of August, twice royal on the previous to Seville fair. Impressive bullfights in the Goyesque style are held, and important musical concerts with leading figures offer amusement and relax to both visitors and residents, such as the Blues Festival, internationally well known, the Flamenco Night at Santa Maria Square, or the Baroque night festivals all over Antequera. So, can you see now? The playwright Fernando Raval, after traveling around Antequera, defined it as the perfect combination of what is divine and human. Undoubtedly, he referred to the fact that Antequera altogether combines unsurpassable natural wonders with exceptional man works impossible to find anywhere else. We really would like this documentary to have been explanatory enough for you. That is our wish.
Malaga, Cordoba and Sevilla, as it happens today. This is evidenced by the Roman thermal baths near Santa Maria's church, which used to be built in the outskirts. This Antequera was so important that it was surrounded by Roman villas, where important families used to live. These villas supplied cereals and exquisite olive oil from Antequera to Rome, the town of the Seven Hills, which should have one more built up, with the remains from the pots which carried the Spanish oil to Rome. The villas were decorated with large ponds, beautiful statues as the Febo de Antequera, the bust of Germanica, and of the Venus of Antequera. Before continuing, we should mention the close in Gili Barba, one of the most important towns in the Baetica, which enjoyed special municipal charters and privileges, and had important temples, markets, and amphitheatres whose stones have been used for the reconstructed Roman amphitheatre of Malaga, and enormous ponds where they performed naval battles. It also had remains of one of the main Roman roads which crossed Baetica. It is precisely in St. Gili Barba where we find an amazing witness, the ashes from the Goth invasion which razed it to grounds. Antequera, which had resisted the first Arab invasion in the 2nd century, couldn't oppose. Like the rest of Hispania, the Goth invasion coming from the north. The Goth reign ended it up in 711. A powerful Arab army entered the peninsula via Tarifa. The Arabs, similarly to what the Romans had done before, conquered the land in a military tour. We shouldn't forget the decay of the Roman Empire and the Visigothic weakening. The new conquerors, as the Romans had done before, became aware of the strategic importance of Antequera, from now on called Marina Antequera, placed in the crossroads from Cordoba to Malaga and from Sevilla to Granada. The importance of Antequera was kept in mind by the different Arab kings and kinglets, who after the beginning of the reconquest in Covadonga and the expansion of it to the kingdoms of Leon, Castilla, Asturias and Aragon, and after the establishment of different agreements with the divided kingdoms of the Muslim Spain, the different Arab king and kinglets always reminded the importance of Antequera leaving this strategic enclave of Antequera out of all cession and agreement. The park of El Torcal de Antequera is one of the most incredible places in the world. It consists scientifically of a karst landscape emerging from a seabed which submerged millions of years ago. Then wind, water and ice shaped the rocks the way we see them today. That is its scientific origin. However, we prefer some other more poetic definitions, such as that why priest Manuel Gámez, speaker of the Semana Santa de Antequera 1989, at the 8th day God resting placed his hand over the earth and the Torcal was created, or that uttered by Juan José Rodríguez Rosado in 1974, who said, "You, Antequera, which sways from the El Torcal to La Peña," or that which tells that a huge wave spurted out of the sea and it became petrified in the El Torcal. Precisely, El Torcal de Antequera gave shelter to the first man who settled on our land. Research from the University of Canarias stated the antiquity of this shelter in which men kept wheat seeds. El Torcal de Antequera is formed by 17 square kilometers of limestones, which are joined and give shape to a unique, gorgeous and beyond compare landscape. Its origin goes millions of years back when andesite limestones emerged over 1,300 meters above sea level. Nature provided a paradise in which water and wind, as well as rock erosion, created an incomparable landscape that needs being there to understand its nature. This dolmen, discovered in 1930 by the Ayer brothers, was built 4,000 years ago and consists of a 27-stone corridor which gets into the funeral chamber where the deceased people of the time were buried. It is placed next to Menge dolmen. It takes its name from the nearby state. It was also discovered by the Ayer brothers, but in 1905. It dates from the 1800 year before Christ. A 23-meter long gallery leads to a great chamber having a false dome, which is considered to be the first sample of human architecture in Europe, parallel to the Greek treasure of Ayer in Mycenae. There is a small funeral chamber at the back. When building these funeral monuments, the skillful architect positions them to face the crag, nowadays known as the Lover's Crag, from where the sun rises in Antequera. Curiously, the Roman, Arab and Christian graveyards do also face toward the same point. And Rome desires to conquer Europe, made it span over the Iberian Peninsula, where the Iberians and Phoenicians had previously set up important settlements. Rome, in an almost pacific way, was conquering all the area, thus becoming the Baetica province, one of the most important provinces of the empire. They set up a town among the important towns of Astigi, Hispalis, Malacca and Cordoba, which they called Antiquaria, maybe due to the abundance of historical remains. They established here because its location in the south of Baetica was considered essential, thus in the middle of the four major towns mentioned above, regardless of some other important population centers, such as Singhilia Barba. That antiquaria was located in the highest point of the settlement, ruling the roads to modern. We can get inside and be amazed by the shapes formed by its limestones. Thus, we can gaze at emerging shapes such as screws, cups, spectacles, human faces, turtles, and dinosaurs, among others. It would take quite a long time from the predator man to settle in a specific place, giving up transhumance in order to take advantage of the richness of the soil, of a fertile land, and of plenty of water and game. If that primitive man enters sailing along the edge of the coast of Malaga and then traveling inwards, it is clear that the sight of this landscape convinced him to settle here. And here was settled such an important colony, so as to have a chief to whom dedicate the funeral monument of Menga, or families worthy of the monument of Viera. Both of them are the best conserved dolmens, according to the former General Director for UNESCO, Dr. Amadou Mather Magbo, who cried astonished by such a sight. Once fulfilled the need for a funeral monument with the apparent simpleness of Menga and Viera, now man searches for beauty in the dolmen of the Romeral. A good example is the false dome prelude of the Renaissance domes, which makes clear the search for beauty. All this together made our dolmens to be known as the Parthenon of antiquity. The dolmen of Menga is 4,500 years old. It is a structure consisting of huge stones megaliths set vertically in 3 rows. The 20 side stones from the walls and the 3 in the middle are the pillars that hold up 5 huge slabs that constitute the ceiling. The estimated weight of one of them is 108,000 kilograms, being 6 meters wide, 4 meters high, and 25 meters deep. The playwright Fernando Arrabal, after traveling around Antequera, defined it as the perfect combination of what is divine and human. Undoubtedly, he referred to the fact that Antequera altogether combines unsurpassable natural wonders with exceptional man works impossible to find anywhere else. We'll try to explain this.